They'll call you crazy long before they call you chosen. That's the pattern, isn't it? The moment you start moving differently, thinking differently, speaking like you know something they don't, they stare. Not because they're curious. No, because deep down they feel it. That disruption, that divine discomfort your existence brings. You're not fitting in their boxes anymore. You're bending the rules they swore were unbreakable. And that scares them more than anything. They don't clap for the chosen one at the beginning. They stare, sideways glances, whispers behind your back like your presence is an inconvenience, like your very existence is something they forgot to approve. You see, when you're chosen, you're misunderstood. Not because you're wrong, but because you don't match the script. You don't walk like them, think like them, break like them. You walk into rooms that weren't built for you and still sit like the chair was made with your name on it. And that rattles something in people. Because when you're chosen, your light doesn't just shine, it exposes. And no one likes being exposed. Being chosen doesn't mean crowned. It means crushed. Crushed under pressure most couldn't breathe under. You wake up to battles no one sees. Smile through storms no one survives. And when people wonder why you're so distant, it's because you've already buried parts of yourself trying to be digestible. You've watered yourself down, dimmed your flame, made yourself small so they'd stop calling you too much. But the truth? You were never too much. They were never enough. They weren't built to handle chosen. People forget that chosen ones are forged in silence. While the world parties, you're being pulled. While they chase comfort, you're chased by calling. And it doesn't ask for permission. It interrupts your plans, rips away your distractions, and drops you in the middle of nowhere with nothing but a whisper. Go. Go where? Go how? That's not the question. The question is, will you? Will you move when you can't see? Will you speak when your voice shakes? Will you rise when everything around you screams, stay down? It's funny. They want your strength, but not your scars. They admire the shine, but run from the shadow that made it. Because the chosen don't just fight battles, they are the battlefield. You carry weight that should break you, but instead it shapes you. Your back bends, but doesn't snap. Your heart bleeds, but keeps beating. And that makes people uncomfortable, because you're proof that pain can birth purpose. That broken doesn't mean buried. That survival isn't luck, it's identity. You're not chosen because you're special. You're chosen because you're obedient. You listen when it hurts. You follow when it's lonely. You trust when everything screams betrayal. And that obedience, that's where the power lies. Not in applause, not in popularity. In obedience. In moving when no one else would. In believing when no one else did. In carrying the weight of destiny when everyone else dropped theirs. So when you feel alone, good. That's confirmation. When they mock you, perfect. That's validation. When you start to question if you're losing your mind, that's the clearest sign you're stepping into purpose. Because chosen ones don't walk the easy path. They walk the one with thorns, with betrayal, with nights that crush and mornings that mock. But through it all, they keep walking, not because they're fearless, but because they're focused. Not because they're strong, but because they know. You weren't picked by people. You were pulled by something greater. You didn't audition for this. You were born for it. And deep down, even when you try to ignore it, even when you wish it away, you know it. That ache in your soul when you settle. That fire in your chest when you shrink. That whisper that won't let you sleep at night. You know what it is. You've always known. And now you're being reminded. Because the time for hiding is over. You ever notice how the loudest ones are usually the most afraid? The ones who bark orders, puff their chests, act like kings, but deep inside, hollow, empty, shivering little puppets trying to look bigger than the strings that control them. That's the thing about power, the real kind. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need parades or applause or 100,000 likes. It walks in quiet. It waits. It watches. And when it moves, it moves everything. But you were never meant to play pretend. You weren't born for the stage. They built it to distract you. You were never supposed to blend in, but they fed you lies dressed as rules. Speak when spoken to. Don't stand out. Don't feel too much. They clipped your wings and handed you trophies for crawling. And then they laughed when you forgot how to fly. That's the joke, isn't it? Turn fire into ashes, then mock the cold. They tell you to follow the blueprint. Go to school. Get the job. Keep your head down. Don't ask why. Don't feel too deeply. Don't dream too loudly. And the moment you dare to question it, you become the problem. You're too intense. You're too sensitive. You're too rebellious. No, you're just awake. And that scares them. Because they've spent their whole lives sedated by comfort, while you're starting to feel again. You're starting to see again. The world doesn't like mirrors. It likes masks. And people, they'll do anything to protect their illusion. The moment you pull off your mask and show up raw, show up real, they panic. Because your truth threatens their lie. Your freedom challenges their cage. They'll call you dangerous, unpredictable, unstable, not because you're wrong, but because you're unshakable. And unshakable is terrifying in a world addicted to approval. You were meant to disrupt. To rattle cages, to ignite hearts that forgot how to burn. And maybe that's why you felt like an outcast, like a mistake, like a glitch in the system. But glitches aren't flaws, they're signs, warnings, proof the program is breaking. And baby, if you're glitching, it means the system couldn't hold you. It means you're the upgrade they never saw coming. They want you quiet because your roar exposes their silence. They want you small because your rise reminds them of everything they gave up. But you didn't come this far to be digestible. You came to be undeniable. So let them talk. Let them squirm. Let them misunderstand. You weren't made to be understood. You were made to be felt. To shake rooms just by standing in them. To leave echoes behind long after you've gone. To make people uncomfortable enough to wake up. And when they say you're changing, good. That means it's working. That means the old version of you is crumbling and the real one's finally stepping through. Don't apologize for growing. Don't flinch when they flinch, because they'll call you crazy right up until the moment they call you genius. Tick, tick, tick. That's the sound of what they fear most. Not a bomb, not a scream, but a mind waking up. See, they don't panic when you fail. They don't tremble when you stumble. Oh no, they only start sweating when you think. When you pause, when you question. Because that silence, that stillness, that's where rebellion is born. Not with guns or banners, but with one dangerous little thought. What if they're wrong? You were raised in a circus where clowns wear suits and the ringmasters preach fear. They taught you to clap on cue, laugh when told, cry only when scripted. Every day was a performance, wasn't it? Smile for the cameras, hide the cracks. Be polite. Be nice. Be agreeable. Be normal. But you never quite fit the costume. It itched. It pulled. It suffocated. So you twisted in your seat, fidgeted in your skin, until one day you stood. And just like that, the audience turned. Oh, how they loved you when you played your part. But when you walked off stage, when you tore the mask off and said, no more, that's when the whispers started. That's when they called you broken, lost, unstable. But isn't that funny? You finally told the truth, and they called it madness. You see, society has a script for you, a neat little checklist. School, career, marriage, mortgage, misery. They hand it to you wrapped in gold and call it success. And if you dare to say, I want more, if you ask, who wrote this garbage? They look at you like you've set fire to the church, because you did. You burned their idol, the idol of comfort, of compliance, of controlled dreams. They'll try, though. Oh, they'll try. With labels, with shame, with threats wrapped in concern. You're too intense. You're not thinking straight. You've changed. Damn right you've changed. You evolved. You stopped living someone else's lie and started writing your own chaos. And chaos. Chaos is truth with its makeup off. It's the moment the music stops and you realize you were dancing to a song you hated. Let them call you dangerous. Let them tighten their grip. Because the ones who tremble when you speak are the ones who built their world on silence. And you were never meant to be quiet. You weren't built for the background. You're not wallpaper. You're the wrecking ball they didn't see coming. The voice in the dark that says, this isn't enough. The question in the crowd that makes the speaker stutter. The crack in the glass that turns into an avalanche. You don't need permission to be real. You don't need approval to be alive. You don't need their comfort if it costs your soul. Tear the script. Burn the stage. Walk out of the circus and into the storm. Because out there, that's where the wild things are. That's where truth lives. Where pain isn't hidden. Where joy isn't packaged, where people scream, cry, fight, and feel without apology. That's where you belong, not in their cage, but in the chaos that built the sky. They told you to stay humble, didn't they? Be patient, be quiet, wait your turn, respect the order. Funny thing about order, it always benefits the ones who created it. They sit at the top of a pyramid they built with your silence, your obedience, your fear. And every time you stand too tall, they whisper, sit down. Every time you shine too bright, they say, dim it down. Because your light exposes their shadows, your rise reminds them they're still crawling. You were never meant to be small, but they knew that. Oh, they knew. The moment you spoke your truth, the room got colder. Not because you lied, but because you didn't. Because truth, when spoken by someone who isn't supposed to speak, becomes a weapon. And they fear that weapon more than they fear any fist or fire. They fear the voice that won't bow, the stare that won't break, the soul that refuses to shrink. Look at them. So proud in their titles, their ties, their carefully constructed facades. Kings of plastic empires, queens of hollow praise. They clap for each other in rooms filled with echoes, mistaking noise for meaning. But when you walk in, the air changes. Why? Because you didn't ask for their permission. You didn't kiss the ring. You didn't beg for a seat at their rigged table. You brought your own damn chair, and they hate that. They want you invisible, not gone, not dead, just invisible enough to not disturb the illusion. They want your work, not your worth, your time, not your voice, your energy, not your essence. And when you refuse, when you say, I won't bleed for this circus anymore, that's when the masks slip. That's when the claws come out. Because a system doesn't break when the weak collapse, it breaks when the strong say no more. You ever notice how they love your potential, but hate your power? They applaud your dreams as long as they stay dreams. But the moment you make a move, the moment you act on it, suddenly you're arrogant. You're too much. You're not a team player. because the game was never designed for you to win. It was built for you to run in circles until you die tired and obedient. But you stopped running. You saw through the game. You saw the strings. You saw the fear behind their smiles. And now they label you as unstable, unpredictable, rebellious, because nothing terrifies a machine more than a cog that grows teeth. A cog that says, I'm not part of this anymore. A cog that becomes a spark, and sparks become fire. And fire doesn't apologize. Fire doesn't ask if it's welcome. Fire doesn't wait for approval. It burns. It consumes. It transforms. And that's what you are now, a transformation in motion. A reminder that even a whisper, when spoken at the right frequency, can shatter glass. That even one soul fully awakened can topple towers built on lies. They like to say, you've changed, as if staying the same was ever an accomplishment, as if growth was a betrayal. But you were never meant to stay frozen in their idea of who you should be. You were never built to rot politely in someone else's version of comfort. You were built to shed, to break, to burn down the parts of you that no longer fit and walk away from the ashes without flinching. But they don't want that, do they? No, they want you stuck, predictable, contained, easy to manage, easy to forget. They'll guilt you for outgrowing them. They'll twist your evolution into arrogance. They'll say, you think you're better now? As if you owe them the courtesy of your stagnation. But they don't see the nights you wrestled with yourself, the mornings you woke up haunted by doubt, the days you questioned whether you were strong enough to keep climbing. They just see you standing taller now, and it scares them. Not because you've changed, but because they haven't. You see, people love the idea of you until it confronts the reality of them. They're fine when you're silent. They're supportive when you're struggling. But the moment you start speaking in a tone that doesn't ask for approval, the moment your wins don't come with disclaimers or apologies, that's when they flinch. Because deep down, they're not afraid of your failure. They're afraid of your success. Because your growth forces them to see their own decay. So they start whispering, not to understand, but to contain. You've forgotten where you came from. No, you remember exactly where you came from. You just refuse to stay there. You've changed. Damn right. Because survival isn't about staying the same. It's about adapting, transforming, rising. But they want your loyalty more than your liberty, your old version more than your future. They want a familiar ghost, not a living revolution. And they hate it. Not because you've become evil, but because you've become honest. Honest with yourself. Honest about what you deserve. Honest about who they really are when the masks come off. And truth, when it walks into a room full of denial, always feels like violence. But let them flinch. Let them gossip. Let them choke on the sound of your steps when you walk away from the cages they tried to dress up as kingdoms. You don't owe anyone the comfort of your silence. You don't owe them the corpse of your past just to prove you're still humble. They'll say you've changed like it's a crime. But change is the most natural rebellion there is. Flowers bloom, stars explode, oceans rise, and you're just another force of nature refusing to be predictable. So walk different, speak louder, look them in the eye and smile without explanation. You're not rude, you're real. You're not distant, you're discerning. You're not heartless, you've just stopped offering yours to those who only know how to crush it. Let them misinterpret your peace as pride. Let them label your clarity as cruelty. Let them be uncomfortable. Growth was never meant to make others feel safe. It was meant to make you feel free. They want the power, but not the pressure. The crown, but not the weight. They want the fire without the heat, the light without the burn. But you were never built for halfway. You were never meant to live in between. And now they watch you, confused, even offended. Because you didn't just survive what they thought would kill you. You came back laughing. You came back louder. You came back aware. Aware of how fake the applause was, how hollow their advice sounded, how their love only lasted as long as your silence did. You were expected to collapse neatly, weren't you? Quietly, without inconvenience. They like their casualties clean. But here you are, walking chaos, breathing proof that broken things can't be buried when they decide they still want to grow. And it unsettles them. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're not dependent anymore. You've detached from their permission. You've severed the strings. And suddenly they don't know how to play you. See, they needed you fragile. Not because they cared, but because it made them feel strong. They called it helping when it was just control. They called it helping when it was just control. They called it advice when it was really manipulation. They smiled, not out of joy, but out of fear. Fear that you might notice how free you've become. And the scariest thing about freedom, it's contagious. One taste and you'll never beg again. You speak with a tone now, not loud, just certain. You move like you've met yourself in the dark and made peace with the monster. You don't flinch when they raise their voice anymore because you've heard louder screams inside your own skull. You don't shrink under pressure because you've walked through days that tried to crush you into nothing, and you're still here, sharper than ever. You don't just survive, you adapt, you evolve. And evolution to the stagnant looks like defiance, so they whisper, they distance, they warn others. They've changed. And yes, you have. You've unlearned the lies. You've burned the masks. You've outgrown the stage they tried to keep you performing on. You've become fluent in silence, but deadly in truth. Now your presence disrupts their comfort, and your absence exposes their intentions. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you that didn't know better. But you do now. You see the games before they're played. You smell the envy before it's spoken. You catch the shade even when it's disguised as light. And while they spiral in pretense, you walk in purpose. Because you no longer operate for applause, you move with alignment. You don't want validation, you want velocity. Forward. Always forward. And if they can't keep up, they'll call you too much, too fast, too intense. Let them. Let them panic over your power. Let them rewrite history because they can't control your present. You were never meant to stay small just to be loved by those who fear their own expansion. You're not too much, you're just not for the faint-hearted. And now that you've tasted what it means to choose yourself over their comfort, there's no going back. Tick-tock, 20 minutes, that's all. Not an hour, not a day, just 20. And suddenly everything feels heavier, doesn't it? Every second louder, every breath sharper. It's funny how quiet people get when time runs thin. How honest they become when there's nowhere left to run. You've been walking around like time was infinite, like chances grow on trees, like you could press snooze on destiny, but then this shows up. A message, a moment, a little whisper from above, or maybe below, telling you it's time. Now. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. Funny how we treat time like a joke until the punchline hits. When you've got hours, you waste them. When you've got days, you drift. But give someone 20 minutes, just 20, and suddenly the air changes. Every tick sounds like a hammer. Every shadow looks like a truth you didn't want to see. Time doesn't whisper anymore, it screams, because now it's real. Now it's not some abstract thing floating in the distance. Now it's sitting in front of you with a crooked grin, reminding you that the end isn't a myth, it's a fact, and it's close. People love pretending they've got time. It makes them feel in control. I'll start tomorrow. I'll fix it later. I've still got time. But that clock doesn't care, doesn't pause for your plans, doesn't slow down for your excuses. It just keeps marching second by second until suddenly you're not in control, you're out of it, out of time, out of chances. And when you finally realize it, that's when the panic sets in. That's when the truth shows up. The real truth. The one you've been dodging behind distractions, laughter, fake smiles, fake lives. Now here you are, 20 minutes left, and something in your gut tells you this one matters. This one isn't like the others. You were told to open something you've kept shut for too long. Maybe it's a memory. Maybe it's a decision. Maybe it's you. But now you've only got 20 minutes to do what should have been done years ago. Now, with time slipping through your fingers like sand soaked in sweat, you finally ask the questions you were too afraid to ask. You finally feel the weight you've been carrying, but pretending wasn't there. It's funny, isn't it? How we treat time like it owes us something. Like we were promised a later. Like someday is a place on the map. But when that clock winds down, there's no more pretending. There's only you and what you didn't do. What you could have done, and you think back to all those empty moments you treated like forever, all the chances you buried under fear, all the voices you ignored, especially the one in your own damn head screaming, "Wake up." 20 minutes left, and suddenly your heartbeat becomes a metronome. Every thud is a reminder. Every breath is heavier. You try to focus, but the weight of what you haven't done suffocates everything. And that box, the one you've been ordered to open, yeah, that box holds everything you're not ready for, which means it holds everything you need. But opening it now with time nearly gone takes guts you thought you lost. That's the thing about time. It doesn't warn you politely. It doesn't knock. It kicks the door in, flips the table, and points at everything you've been hiding from. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't rewind. You can't beg for more minutes when you wasted the hours. Time doesn't do refunds. Time doesn't feel sorry for you. It just tells the truth over and over until you finally listen. So now, here you are, 20 minutes from the end, with truth in your lap and fire in your chest. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally awake. You see it now. Time isn't gentle. Time is brutal. It waits for no one. And when it finally shows its teeth, that's when you figure out who you really are. Obedience. Such a lovely little word, isn't it? Polite, well-dressed, walks in a straight line and never talks back. But real obedience, the kind that claws at your spine and punches you in the gut, that kind doesn't look like a Sunday school lesson. It looks like fear. It looks like sweat rolling down your temple while you stand in front of something you can't explain, can't understand, but have to follow. No applause, no audience, just you and a command that doesn't come with instructions. See, people like obedience when it's easy, when it's convenient. Do the right thing. As long as it doesn't cost you too much. Be honest, unless lying gets you further. Follow the voice, but only if it matches your plan. The moment it gets uncomfortable, the moment it doesn't come with a guarantee of success, suddenly they start calling it madness. Suddenly it's, why would you do that? Or that doesn't make sense, as if sense has anything to do with purpose. As if God sends orders only when you're ready. But when the voice speaks, and oh, it speaks, you know in your bones, even if your brain begs to run. It doesn't come dressed in comfort. It doesn't come with a safety net. It comes when everything's quiet, when the world's asleep, when your chest feels like it's cracking open. It doesn't explain. It commands. And it never asks for your permission. People say obedience is about discipline. No. Real obedience is about war. Internal war. Between the part of you that wants to stay where it's safe and the part of you that knows safety is a prison. Between the version of you that wants to be liked and the version of you that was born to burn. And when the order comes, it doesn't care about your schedule. It doesn't care about your reputation. It comes to see if you'll move, even if it costs you everything. And that's the difference. That's the line between the actors and the chosen. The actors perform obedience when it looks good. The chosen bleed for it when no one's watching, because they've heard something no one else heard, felt something no one else felt, and now they're standing at the edge, fists clenched, heart pounding, and all they've got is faith and fire and a voice that says, now. You don't get to negotiate with a calling. You don't get to pencil it in after lunch. Obedience doesn't wait for your mood to catch up. It expects you to move while your knees shake. It expects you to say yes when everything inside you is screaming no. That's the point. That's the test. It's not about being ready. It's about being willing. You obey not because it's logical. You obey because the one who gave the order already saw the other side, saw what you'd miss if you stayed still, saw who you'd never become if you said no. But still, it's your choice. You can pretend you didn't hear it. You can drown it out with noise, with doubt, with comfort. You can tell yourself you've got more time. You can lie to yourself. Everyone does. But that command doesn't go away. It lingers. It waits. It sits in the back of your mind like a lit fuse. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets. Because deep down, you know this isn't about clarity. It's about courage. It's not about proof. It's about trust. You don't obey because you see the path. You obey because something inside you knows the path will only appear after you take the first step. You know what's hilarious? The way people run from what they need. Like it's wearing a mask and carrying a knife. They build entire lives dodging mirrors, polishing distractions, smiling at strangers while burying their own damn truth 6 feet deep. But here's the twist, what you're avoiding. It's not going away. It waits. It watches. And it grows teeth in the dark. You pretend it's not there, and it sharpens the blade. People dress up fear in fancy words. I'm just not ready. It's not the right time. I need a sign. No. What they really mean is, I know it's there and I'm terrified of what it means. Because deep down, they already know. They know the thing they've been running from isn't the enemy, it's the cure. But cures don't always taste sweet. Sometimes they burn on the way down. Avoidance is easy. It gives you something to do. You get to feel busy, productive, distracted. But it's hollow, it's plastic, and underneath that perfect little routine, there's a ticking sound, a slow, steady countdown reminding you that sooner or later you've got to turn around and face what's been following you this whole time. And when you finally do, oh, it's not pretty. You think you'll walk up to it all noble, all brave, but no. It'll grab you by the throat and show you everything you've tried to forget. All the silence you ignored. All the choices you didn't make. All the chances you left bleeding on the floor. Because that's what truth does. It doesn't ask for permission. It kicks the door in. And it only shows up when the mask slips and the lights go out. You want to grow? You want to wake up? Then stop chasing the easy fixes. Stop begging for comfort. Start paying attention to the thing you don't want to talk about. The feeling that won't shut up. The thought you keep locking in the basement. That's where the key is. Not in the shiny books, not in the perfect plans, in the mess, in the wound, in the very thing you swore you'd never touch again. Most people don't want healing. They want relief. They want a shortcut through the storm. They want the answer without the question. But real change, that's blood and fire. That's opening the box you buried, the one marked never again. That's ripping off your own disguise and saying, fine, show me. And it will. It'll show you everything. Not to break you, but to rebuild you. Stronger, meaner, clearer. But only if you stop running. Only if you stop pretending that what's killing you is someone else's fault. You're not lost, you're not confused, you're just scared. Scared that if you open that door, you'll see a version of yourself that demands more, that burns brighter, that doesn't need their permission. The voice you keep silencing, it never stopped speaking. You just turned the volume down. The path you claim not to see, it's been under your feet the whole time. You don't need a map. You need nerve. The kind that laughs at comfort. The kind that says, yeah, I'm scared and I'm going anyway. Because what you avoid, it grows. It mutates. It feeds off your fear. But the second you face it, the second you call its bluff, it shrinks. Not because it was small, but because you got bigger. All it takes is one look, one breath, one moment where you stop lying to yourself and say, all right, then let's see what's behind the curtain. They say isolation is dangerous. That silence can drive a person mad. Maybe they're right, but maybe, just maybe, madness was already there, and the quiet just pulled back the curtain. You see, people spend their whole lives clinging to noise, surrounding themselves with voices, chaos, blinking lights, buzzing screens, constant motion, anything to drown out that one sound they're most afraid of, their own. You step back for a day and suddenly the world thinks you're broken. They don't like it when someone disappears, even for a moment. It makes them nervous, makes them wonder what you're really thinking, because deep down, they know if you stop long enough, you might hear something dangerous. And nothing terrifies them more than someone who hears it and doesn't flinch. Everyone's addicted to attention, addicted to being seen. Even if it's fake, even if it's hollow. They'll trade their peace for applause, their minds for approval. They're so desperate not to feel alone that they'll carry 10 masks in one day, just to be accepted. But isolation, real, intentional isolation, that's where the masks fall off. That's where you find out which voice belongs to you and which ones you've been mimicking. People confuse isolation with weakness. They think silence means surrender, but it's the opposite. It's restraint, power pulled back like a loaded spring. Because when you're alone, you stop performing. You stop playing nice. You stop entertaining the circus and finally ask, what the hell do I want? And that question, it's a dangerous one because it tears through everything you built for other people. In the quiet, there's no audience, just the mirror. And the reflection doesn't lie. It shows you who you are when no one's clapping, when no one's watching. It shows you the cracks, the rage, the brilliance, the mess. And most people can't handle that, so they run back into the noise. They'd rather be miserable in a crowd than magnificent in solitude. When you stay inside, they'll knock, they'll text, they'll wonder. Because your silence threatens their comfort. Your distance forces them to confront their own noise. They'll call you names, distant, selfish, detached, but that's the cost of clarity. The price of stepping out of their rhythm and into your own pulse. And once you hear it clearly, you don't unhear it. You don't go back. The thing about isolation, it reveals your addictions. To people, to approval, to needing to be needed. It shows you how many of your choices were just reactions. And it dares you to make decisions that aren't based on fear. It dares you to be deliberate, to move with weight, with intent. You learn things in silence that the world is too loud to teach. You learn how to sit with your darkness and not be consumed, how to talk to your demons without letting them drive, how to find the calm under the chaos and own it, not borrow it, not rent it. And suddenly being alone isn't lonely. It's liberating. You stop begging for space and you become the space. You stop chasing validation and you become the storm. And when the world knocks again, maybe you answer. Or maybe you don't. Because now you know the difference between silence and surrender. Between being alone and being awake. Funny, isn't it? How they treat exhaustion like a crime when it comes from chasing something real. They want you moving, glowing, grinding, always grinding. Smile on your face, fire in your step, hope in your voice. But the second you pause, the moment you slow down, suddenly it's all questions. Are you okay? What happened? Why are you being so distant? As if rest is rebellion. As if catching your breath is some kind of confession. But that's what happens when people get used to feeding off your energy. They start thinking it's theirs. They expect it on demand. You light the room. They warm their hands. You carry the weight. They clap from the sidelines. And the day you stop, the day you say not today, they panic. Because now they're cold. Now they feel the silence. Now they realize they never learned how to burn on their own. Rest. Rest is dangerous. Rest tells the world, I don't need you clapping for me to feel alive. Rest whispers, I've got enough fire without your matches. And that terrifies them. Because if you, the one they counted on to keep dancing, suddenly steps out of the spotlight, what does that say about them? About their dependence on your chaos? About their addiction to your noise? People confuse your silence with weakness. They confuse your pause with failure. They see you still and think you're broken. But stillness? Stillness is strategy. You can't hear the next move when you're screaming through the last one. You can't see the next battle when your vision's blurred from the last war. So you go quiet. You step back. Not because you're defeated, but because you know the storm doesn't reveal its strength with noise. It builds it in silence. And the funny thing, while they whisper and wonder and invent stories about your retreat, you're charging. Not like a machine, not like a slave to productivity. No, you're reloading with purpose, letting the weight settle so you can choose what to carry next and what to drop for good. You stop apologizing for being tired. You stop explaining your silence. You stop making excuses for needing space from the world that never learned how to stop taking. Because this rest isn't weakness. This rest is resistance against the idea that your worth is measured by your output, against the lie that constant movement equals progress, against the sickness that says if you're not exhausted, you're not trying. No. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop. Not quit. Stop. Breathe. Regroup. Sit in the dark and listen to your own damn heartbeat instead of the noise they keep blasting through your veins. They'll call it laziness. They'll say you're drifting. But what they don't know is, while they're busy chasing their tails, you're building something deeper. Not a mask. Not a brand. A core. A center. And that center doesn't need likes, doesn't need applause, doesn't even need to be seen. It just needs to be solid, quiet, untouchable. You reclaim your breath. You reclaim your time. You reclaim the rhythm they tried to steal. And when you walk back in, you don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them your old self. You come back on your own terms, with eyes sharper and voice quieter. Because you've seen what happens when the world gets too used to your fire and you forget to keep some for yourself. It's funny how people worship what's locked. They'll walk past open doors every day, ignore windows wide as skies, and yet give them a sealed box, a forbidden file, a blinking light with a sign that says, "Do not press." And suddenly they can't breathe without knowing what's inside. Curiosity, they call it. But it's not that simple. It's need. It's obsession. It's the itch behind the eyes that says, if you don't look, you'll go mad. And yet when something sacred shows up, when it's meant to be opened, when it begs to be touched, what do? Freeze, hesitate, wait for permission from ghosts they've never met. Because truth, real truth, doesn't come gift-wrapped. It doesn't beg. It shows up like a challenge, a riddle, a loaded gun. And most people, they'd rather keep the box closed, let the countdown run out, and pretend they never heard the ticking. That's the trick, isn't it? Tell someone they have forever, and they'll waste every second. But tell them they've got 20 minutes left. Tell them now is the moment, and you'll see who they really are. Suddenly, the mask doesn't fit. The fake laugh cracks. The eyes dart like rats looking for the exit. Because the moment feels real, and real is rare. Real is uncomfortable. Real is sharp enough to draw blood. They think divine orders come with light beams and choirs. But it's never like that. No thunder, no script, just a whisper. A pull in your chest. A sudden weight in your lungs that says, open it now or lose something you won't get back. And what do most do? They wait. They bargain. They beg for more time. They don't realize that doors don't knock forever, that some calls are one time only. You've seen it. The hesitation. The breath held too long. The finger hovering over the button, afraid of what might happen if it actually works. Because wanting something is easy. Everyone wants. But opening it, acting on it, that's where the fear lives. Because once it's open, there's no going back. No pretending you didn't see. No unknowing what you've just been shown. And choice is terrifying. Because once you choose, you're responsible. No more blame. No more hiding behind circumstances. You open that thing, you own what's inside. Good or bad. Heaven or hell. That's what keeps most people frozen. It's not the box. It's the accountability. It's the fact that if they open it and it changes everything, they'll have to be someone new. But you already know. You feel it. The static in your spine. The heat in your hands. You didn't stumble here by accident. That thing calling to you, it knows your name. And it's not asking for faith. It's demanding nerve. The kind that doesn't flinch when the sky cracks. The kind that smiles when the ground shakes. Because it's not about knowing what's inside. It's about being willing to find out. You don't get moments like this often. The kind that split time. The kind that mark before and after. And people will say you're reckless for opening it. That you're impulsive. But deep down, they're just scared you'll find something they weren't brave enough to look for. That you'll break through while they're still sitting on the edge, afraid to touch the thing that could have changed them forever.